I got something to say, ladies and men that support us around the world. You've had a lot to say in the last week. I mean, holy moly. Well, first of all, thank you from the bottom of my heart for supporting everything I do, even though you don't get what I'm doing sometimes. And for those who've already signed up for Listen to Her, which I got to tell Stephanie about. It's going to be in Silicon Valley with my friend Arena Ferguson, who curated my TEDx, February 28th and March 1st. I'm so grateful. Thank you for signing up. Oh, matter of fact, I screwed up, Stephanie. I never gave them the code, the early bird code for 25% off for listening to the podcast. So here's the deal. If anyone, I think it's still valid, uses my initials in capitals, SJW, and you put it in the promo code, SJW, you will get off 25% for the Listen to Her conference. So go for it. Now, Stephanie Dauble's in the house. Oh my God. It only took us what, year and a half?
3.
Oh my goodness.
Listen, there's no time like today. Let's do it.
Oh my, listen, there's no time like today. So I love that. Stephanie and I met at Heroic Public Speaking, which they know I adore. And we hit it off. And I was like, you got to be on the show. I don't even know what happened, but life happened. And now we're here. And I like that. No time like the present. So thanks for being on. Hey, I got something to say.
I'm happy to be here.
You look fabulous.
Thanks, Sandy. Thanks.
You look fabulous. All right, now. Another thing I'm just going to say, I appreciate all the questions you sent in. I got them all here, but we're not going to get to them all. I'll get to a few. Detroit native Stephanie Dauble is an internationally acclaimed best-selling author, established corporate executive, and accomplished designer, best known for her passionate reframing of the plights of generational trauma, addiction, and mental illness. That's light. And into her inspiring message of creating beauty from broken. She is a tenacious leader whose professional and personal experiences, uncommon perspective, and a zeal for life have well positioned her to untangle complex, I love this, which you know I'm all about, complex paradigms and social stigmas, and emphasize with all sides of a story with compassion and grace. That's a gift. Stephanie believes traversing our most traumatic experiences with grit and gratitude can lead to extraordinary beauty, unexpected fulfillment, and lasting generational change. First of all, I love that description of you.
It almost sounds like your bio. I swear. I didn't cut and paste. I swear it's mine. But we have a lot of similarities in
We
that.
do, but I'm not as well. I mean, there's my gift of not writing. Could you rewrite my bio, please?
I can do it. Yes, I'll do it for you.
Not my strong point. All right. So the one thing she wants to tell women and men that support us around the world is the beauty you're longing for may be hidden in the brokenness you ignored. Okay, well, I've tried to ignore many things, but it just doesn't work. So, Stephanie, I know a little bit about your story.
Yep.
And I know why you picked it, but tell my listeners why you picked that.
I know. So I'm actually just going to start by saying that I had never wanted to be on a podcast, a show, a blog. I didn't want anyone to know my story. I was embarrassed of my story, shame-filled of the story. And I am the daughter of a junkie. And it was an identity that I have been super embarrassed about for my whole life. And I thought, and maybe Sandy, maybe you felt the same way in your life, and maybe some of your listeners do too, where it's sort of like that super embarrassing thing, the further away you can distance yourself from that super embarrassing thing, kind of maybe the better, right?
Yes.
And right.
Holler.
So, you know, I thought, well, let me go into corporate America. Let me distance myself from all this bad stuff and become this new person, this woman that is sort of unrecognizable. And for years and years, I tried to go down that path. And I got pretty good at it
Mhm.
and I liked it. But I think for all of us, when there's a calling, when there's that sort of divine calling from within, there's no way you can only ignore it for so long. And, as sort of the trauma stack and the more things that go on in life, I think we just end up coming back to the point of, there is no other way than the truth. And so a couple of years ago, around the time of COVID, I had some other traumatic things, and maybe we'll get to that or we won't, but I lost my brother and it happened in my arms and it was super traumatic. And in that moment, I realized, this other stuff is fantastic, but there is a story about trauma. There is a story about overcoming trauma, and there is a story about finding the beauty from our trauma that I felt needed to be told. And so, here we are a couple of years later, and I'm finally coming to terms with, two things can be true at once. You
Yeah.
can be a junkie's daughter, and you can also be a successful professional. Both things can be true at the same time. And so here we are talking about it. So this is new for me.
Okay. So I knew some of that, because we met at Heroic Public Speaking. So here's something I don't know about you. So let's dig a little deeper. When I went to Heroic Public Speaking, which is to take your speaking gig to the next level for anybody that doesn't
Yep.
know it.
Yep.
Shout out Michael and Amy Port. So I wasn't going to uncover my story. Like I wasn't, that was not what I was there. I already was a speaker. I love being on stage. I did a lot of fitness wellness. Sandy's going to raise the roof. She's going to spread joy. And, she's an energy shifter. I wasn't going to do the other stuff. And the same thing. Like I had distanced myself I'm the joy spreader. I'm going
Yep.
to lift you up.
Yep.
I wasn't going to tell my story. And then in being there, that whole process that was, I don't know, 8 months, they're like, yeah, tell another story, till finally we're getting into it. And I realized that it was more cathartic for me to be there and didn't know these stories were going to come out of me. And then realized I had, when I was ready, to put them in my keynote to have an impact, but I had to be on the other side of it. I had to serve my audience. And for me, it was, yeah, I grew up in the projects. I don't care. That's hip. That's cool. I made it out. But it was my mom spending her entire life in a mental institution. And I didn't want the stigma that came along with that. And I saw that stigma. And so even with a couple people I'd told, it went awry. So when I got out and went to college, nobody knew me in Old Lady Weston, and nobody was going to.
Yep.
Same thing.
Same thing. And I think what we've learned, and it happens for some people, at 30, 40, 50, 60, there is no right time or wrong time.
Nope.
But I think what we sort of learn is that we're not the people that we are in spite of those things. We're the people we are because of those things. Right. And so I think what you found, is like when you found your voice, that you can be, the daughter who ran through the halls of the mental institution, doing what you did to survive.
Yeah.
And you can also be this powerful woman who's on stage, who has something to say that's impactful and changes lives. Right. And I think that's kind of where we come to, but it's because of those things,
Yeah.
that we are who we are. And that,
Okay.
takes
So
time.
for you, I get it. So for you, did you already come to that decision before you came to Heroic Public Speaking, or did you discover it there? Because I
Yes.
didn't even know I was going to tell my story. Like, were you already there?
Yes, I was there in writing. So I had
Oh,
already made the decision that behind the cover of a book,
oh,
behind the walls of, some other person being the front person, behind the, screen of a blog, behind all of those things, I felt incredibly comfortable talking about these things in really raw ways. I think what I didn't expect is that the minute I got on stage, I froze. The minute someone invited me to a podcast, I couldn't tell it. The minute someone said, well, so it was actually kind of like the reverse. I had the opposite experience. I was ready to tell the story in all of its, ugly and beautiful pieces and parts. But then when, they were like, well, Stephanie, it's your story. You really should be the one that's telling it on the stage, on the microphone, put your,
Yeah.
put your
Yeah.
picture on the book. And that's sort of where I got a little bit, hung up, was it's like there was still kind of this safety and the security of not being seen, and so for me, sort of not being seen was sort of the last frontier of kind of
Ooh.
like completing this sort of like, I'm okay with all of it. I'm okay with the ugly pieces, and I'm okay with the good pieces. And I'm okay with letting people know that there is beauty in the brokenness. But it took a long time. But I had the opposite experience of you,
Yeah.
but I think equally profound in
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So I think this is important. I just want to hold on this for the listeners to get. You're not just one thing or another. We all have things. Like I had someone who said, I was a teenage mom and I'm an amazing leader. She's
Mm.
not like it's not like she was embarrassed that she got pregnant when she was 12, right? But she was like, well, because of that, it made me a more compassionate, empathetic leader. And for years, she was trying to push it over here. But when
Yep.
she embraced it, you're so many things, and that's just one piece of who made you. I just want to make sure, is that what we're
100%.
okay?
It's 100% what we're saying. And I think, there's people say, well, I used to be an alcoholic, and that becomes their identity. I, used to do this, right? And it's sort of like, well, hold on a second. That means that you're also an overcomer. That means that you're also victorious. That means that you're also,
Yeah.
and I just think that, for those of us that, and all of us has had some version of this. Some of it maybe is a little bit more dramatic. Some of it is in the
Yeah.
projects or the ghetto. Some of it, happens in a very fancy home, and it's just as disruptive,
Absolutely.
damaging, even though it doesn't happen in those, those dark places. But we all have, the secret shadows of our life. And I think, for whatever that is for all of us, I just think it's important to remember that all sides of the story are true, and we're not just sort of this one dark thing that becomes our identity. We're also the bright light on the other side.
I love that.
Yep.
Okay. So next point, I just want to home in to for the listeners and the viewers is when you first went up on stage, it wasn't easy at first. Like, did you, like you said, it was like, did you cry? Did you break down? Or did you, once you got up there, you were good?
No, I'm still not good. I'm still learning to overcome that fear. I think a lot of us have a fear of public speaking. I mean, some people are born naturals.
Yeah.
And actually, to be honest with you, I was a born natural. I wanted to be on Broadway when I was younger. I used to sing on a stage and do all these
Yeah.
things. And then as life kind of like took its, punches, I sort of got more and more fearful that maybe I
Yeah.
wasn't worthy of being on a stage. So I think, my sort of tip or trick to that is just, the practicing, the breathing, the learning from professionals,
Mhm.
modeling other people who do it well. So I think, it's getting easier. But if there's any part of this that is still sort of the piece of it that I'm working on, it's actually sort of being the face of my own story.
So your message is so powerful to you, and it's so important to get out there
Yep,
that you're willing to overcome the fear, and you're
correct.
you're stepping in with courage, like, because it's not like, I just want people to hear this. It's not like she went up on stage and goes, hey, I'm here, I belong here, and I'm at home, when she's telling her own story. It takes courage and practice, and the more you do it, it
Yeah, I've
gets
had to come
easier
to
and
terms
easier.
with it's not about me. So the piece of it that I think I always keep remembering is, when I was a 7-year-old in a downtown Detroit drug house, waiting for my mom and all of the other people to kind of do what they do. If I would have heard one person say to me, like, it's going to be okay, or there's light on the other side of this, or it might take 3,651 days before this is over, but hang in there, like, if I would have known that there was hope at the end of this hopelessness,
Mm.
I feel like that would have been enough. That would have been enough to get me through. And, but I didn't have that. And so what I've felt like now is I have a responsibility that's bigger than my own fear to at least try and
Yep.
share what I've learned, and if it helps someone, that's great. If it doesn't, I'm at least doing as much as I can, while I can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to get in right here a couple questions. We're not going to get in that many because
Okay.
Stephanie, I'm so proud of you, number one. And I'm so honored that I know you because every time I'm with you, I get inspired. And I think it's magnificent what you're doing. I think it's magnificent and it touches my heart. And I'm glad that you said, I am there, which we know great keynotes, workshops are all about that. You're there to serve others. And when you do that, it does relax you.
And
It,
own, and
yeah.
own, and
Yeah.
own others. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. All right. So let's get to Betty's. These are made up names. Dear Stephanie, I'm 16. My family, I really, really have trouble liking them, even slightly. I know this came from a school that I taught where the kids were court appointed, and they are surrounded by their family that deals drugs, shoots heroin, and they have a difficult time seeing beyond the victim mode. They don't know how to get out of that. And I know I did a 6-week course for court appointed people, young high school people. And I heard this over and over again. So I can tell you, I probably know who this is coming from. They cannot get beyond like life sucks. Why was I dealt this? And you cannot tell me that I shouldn't feel for me. And most of the people surrounding them look at them differently. Like they don't really think that much of them because they are coming from really bad situation with really bad drug situations. I don't even, maybe I made impact in one of them. So I know this is a big question, but this young person is really like, how can I not feel like the world shit on my head? And they're 15.
I think first of all, I don't know Betty's real name, but I would say to whoever Betty is that it is so incredible and hopeful and optimistic that I'm assuming she um, writes a letter like this into a podcast like this and saying that I'm feeling like there is something that isn't right happening here. And I'm listening to this intuition and something isn't sitting right. The fact that that even happened means that there's a miracle on the way.
Oh,
The fact that even it's even sort of like a mustard seed of a thought in Betty's mind means that a miracle is on the way. And so I think there's a couple of things, there's not much, my mom ended up dying. She didn't die from an overdose, but sort of like that, I
yeah.
mean, it's just sort of, their bodies, when you do that kind of stuff, your bodies become so, riddled with abscesses, and it's just a very terrible way to die. And your heart just can't beat, your blood can't pump. It's just the way that it
Mm.
kind of is, right? And so I think in my experience, I would have loved to have saved her and all of her friends and even the kids that I was in the drug house with. But that wasn't something that I could do. But what I could do is I could change my perspective. And what I could do is I could find somebody to model, you know,
Mm.
like, somebody that maybe was, an adult or a woman that I thought maybe, had a few things that I would like to emulate. So I think like first of all, I believe that Betty's miracle is on the way because she already has the heart for optimism and hope. So I think that in and of itself is
I
a win.
love that. I love that.
And then I also think that like, things like this, I mean, if she stays close to your work, stays close to my work, there's going to be a lot of positivity that comes out of it. And
Mm.
you know what I mean? And I think,
Yes.
when she says that there's a hopelessness on the other side of, yes, she's got this family that are, victims, and that's all true. That's all her truth, right?
Yeah.
But
Yep.
like the other side of that, we're all like, as I was saying at the top of the, the podcast, we're not just that. There's the victim, but she's also the victor. So
Yeah.
I think there's only goodness. There's only goodness in what she's writing us. And I think like she just needs to stay close to us and people that are kind of like all on this path to solving and fixing generational trauma. I mean, imagine if Betty is the one person who becomes the first person in the long lineage of hurt and pain, and she becomes the one to break free. And then from her,
Ooh,
positive things happen. So I think, just stay the course.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh I didn't even think of that spin. That's awesome. All right, I want to get one more in just
Okay.
to make sure because it's a totally different one.
Okay.
And this woman says, Dear Stephanie, did you distance yourself from your mother? My mother is not a drug addict, but she's an alcoholic. And I don't want to bring her around my children. I don't know what to do. I love her, but I don't see her wanting or willing to change.
So I didn't distance myself from my family until later, but I sort of wish that I had more boundaries,
Okay.
you
Okay.
know? I think, and I'm not a therapist, I'm not a professional in this. I'm just someone who I would say that, I've had 10,000 hours of, negotiating chaos. So maybe, so
I
maybe
always say
there's,
we're not therapists, we're not doctors, we're not professional
like I'm
coaches.
not, it's sort of like I'm not a professional, but the thousands of hours of, mastering, chaos, there's a little of experience there. But I think, what I've experienced is that, if it doesn't feel good, it's probably the right decision to listen to that not feeling good. So I think, if she's, and alcoholics, I think, like drug addicts, there's a pattern. There's
Mhm.
a pattern to sort of like the way that they operate. And it usually accelerates over time and gets worse. And this is just the way that it is. And she may never, she'll always, even if she recovers, she'll always be an alcoholic. That's just sort of the nature of addiction in general, is even when you recover, you still
Yeah.
always, have sort of like that to cope with. But I think, there could be a boundary, like, maybe she doesn't start drinking until 4. Maybe like it's 3 or 4 in the afternoon and she drinks until 2 in the morning, but maybe there's, an hour or 2 in the morning where she's, level-headed, or maybe it's like the best version of her. And so maybe there's a way to sort of like, still have a little bit of a relationship without abandoning your boundaries of having the kids be in the presence of, addiction or in all of those things. And, the things we say when we're drinking, or the things we say, like it is not really the essence of who we are. But if there's a moment or two earlier in a day where she is the better version of herself, there could be a way to have both.
Freaking love that. I love the way, well, maybe she doesn't start drinking till she's at 4, so you can go at 2.
I'm just trying to be realistic, right? Like,
Oh
because
my God, that's awesome. I love that.
I don't think it's realistic to think that like we can, if the person, and no matter, this is, no matter what if it's prescription drugs, if it's, if it's exercise, like no matter what it is, whether it's dramatic or whether it's something a little more benign, you have to decide for yourself that you're going to do it. So there's not really anything we can do. We can bring them the materials, we can, there's a lot that we can recommend, but it actually it has to come from within. But we do
Yeah.
know the patterns, and if we want the best of both worlds, we've got to kind of like keep
Yeah.
our boundaries intact, and maybe find a way to sort of coexist with the people that we still love. And I don't know any other way than to kind of fit into those moments where you get the only version of them that is the real them.
We're not doctors, we're not therapists, we're not professional
No,
coaches. I'm
nope,
just
just
on a
chat.
journey here, sharing you my knowledge. I know, I love that.
Just a couple of girls chatting.
Yeah, just a couple of, but I love this. This is great. So you know what? You don't mention your father. Where was your father in all of this?
So he's there,
Oh, he's there.
not a drug addict, not
Oh,
not a drinker, um, working to basically, keep the family afloat.
mm,
But I think with a lot of people, and maybe you have a similar experience, or maybe your listeners do, that, there's a lot of different ways that people can cope. And one of the ways they can cope is just to sort of like not cope. One of the ways that they can cope is to just sort of, come home from work and sort of shut a door, or,
yeah. Yep.
like
Yep.
let the exhaustion sort of take over. So I think, and I've come to terms with, I believe that, in those situations, people do the best they can with the tools they have. And
Absolutely.
I believe that he is a good man who did the best he could with the tools that he had, so
Yes. Yes.
that's where he was. So he was present, but he wasn't sort of like he wasn't like fighting the good fight for
For his
generational
kids. Yeah.
change. It was just more sort of like, Lord, help me get through this day,
Yeah.
or this
Yeah.
hour, or the
I
next
understand that.
minutes,
Totally.
So it's more of like, it was more coping than
Yeah.
living, I would say. Yeah,
Is he still alive or?
because he is. Yep.
And how's the relationship? Are you good?
Yeah, I mean, I think, forgiveness, I forgave him a long time ago. And,
Oh,
we forgive, I think, not so much for the other person, but we forgive to free ourselves,
absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
a long, long time ago, I thought, if I'm ever going to have, good relationships with anybody, or if I'm ever going to sort of, rise to the level that I was intended to rise to, I'm going to have to forgive the people, not because they deserve it, not because they asked for it, but because that frees me to sort of,
Absolutely.
put that away. And
I
so
used to joke, like, I'm a pretty selfish person. That's why I forgive people. I want to be happy. I'm kidding, but I get it.
but
All
it
right.
is, true. It is
Oh
true.
my God. It's so
I
much
mean,
better.
call it self-preservation, call it self-love, call it
Oh,
selfish,
whatever.
call it whatever you want, but we do it because it does free us to sort of
Absolutely.
become the best version of the person we're supposed to be.
Absolutely. All right. Tell us about your book.
So there's three of them.
What? Wait. How, when did that happen? Or how did I not know?
There's three of them, and I can actually like send them to you so we can put them in a link. But essentially, they're all anthologies, and anthologies are where you have a collection of people that write on a topic. And one of the books is, yeah, and so they're really fun to do. They're great to do if you have a career and you're busy with other things, or you have a family and you're busy with other things, but you know that you've got something to say, right, Sandy? Like, hey, I've got something to say, but you don't have a year or two, to sort of like go in. This is sort of a really cool way to get your story out there. So there's three anthologies. I'll send you the links so we can put them in. One of them, the first one, is actually sort of about this transcendence through trauma. And it kind of
Okay.
gets a little bit more like into the addiction and all of that. And then the other books are a little bit more, a little bit lighter, but they talk about, planning, and how important it is to sort of plan for your destiny and to sort of plan for your legacy, so that it doesn't become sort of someone else's vision for your life. It becomes your vision for yourself. And then the third one is a similar theme. So I'll send you the links. So we'll get those up there.
So what was your latest one?
The latest one was Plan a Life You Love.
I like
Yes.
that.
I like it too. It was a little bit more lighthearted than the other ones, but I just sort of felt like, corporate America, and I was sort of heading down a path that felt like it was a safe path, but
Mhm.
maybe not the one that was I was destined to fulfill.
Yeah.
And so I came up with a new plan and a new strategy and some new standards for my life, and set out on a different path. And that chapter captures the new path. Yes.
All right. I knew this was going to happen, but we got to go, man. We got to go. So, Stephanie, before we go, first things, I'm so glad that we connected. And I do believe it's perfect timing. I
Always.
in that. And they're going to love you and they're going to share it with everyone. I know that. But is there any last thoughts that we didn't get in that you want to get in before we go?
I have a few sort of thoughts in general, and I'll just kind of leave you with three things that I think are kind of important to me and I keep in mind when I make decisions for my life. And the first one is the depth of our pain influences the breadth of our purpose. I think that's something to, that we can think about, maybe even talk about at another time. Also, there is beauty in our brokenness, which is where we started. And
Mm.
the last thing is it's never too late to live our destiny. So whether you're Betty and you're a teenager and you're looking for something that's hope, or whether you're someone who's further along in life and you think, forget it, it's way too late to start now. I'm in my 50s and I'm starting over. And I think that there is sort of no timeline to living our very best life.
Mm. You are an amazing writer. I mean, look, the depth of our pain influences the breadth of our purpose. Oh my God, there is so much to dive in another time.
There is, there is.
Beauty in our brokenness. Holy freaking moly.
Well, this is why I liked hiding, behind the book. But here we are, and we're talking about it. So it's been fun.
That's awesome. All right. How can they book you? How can they find you? How can they look you up?
So they can find me at stephanie.nyc. That's my website.
That's easy peasy.
That's easy. Stephanie.nyc. And then also I write blogs on Medium and it's just under my name.
Okay.
But to get to those blogs from stephanie.nyc.
Okay, cool. All right, hey, I got something to people. I love you guys. I love you guys. And Stephanie and I would really appreciate you liking, rating it, and sharing it.
We'd love it.
All right. We love it. We love it. And you guys are the best. I am partial. I think they are all my peeps come from peace, love, and joy. So I'm very, very grateful that you're here. And you know what I'm going to say. Until next time. Thank you, Stephanie, and toodles.
All right, guys. Thank you.